Hi boys and girls, it's Marci Chavalas and I'm so glad you joined me for story time today. Today's story is called Harvesting Hope, the story of Cesar Chavez by Kathleen Krull, illustrated by Yuyi Morales. This book is an AR book, level 5.6, worth half a point. Harvesting Hope. Look at these beautiful illustrations. Until Cesar Chavez was 10, every summer night was like a fiesta. Relatives swarmed onto the ranch for barbecues with watermelon, lemonade, and fresh corn. Cesar and his brothers, sisters, and cousins settled down to sleep outside under netting to keep mosquitoes out. But who could sleep with uncles and aunts singing, spinning ghost stories, and telling magical tales of life back in Mexico? Cesar thought the whole world belonged to his family. The 80 acres of their ranch were an island in the shimmering Arizona desert, and the starry skies were all their own. Now, do you like to spend time with your family too? Do you have a large family or a small family? Regardless of the size, it is so great to spend time with the people we love. Many years earlier, Cesar's grandfather had built their spacious adobe house to last forever, with walls 18 inches thick. A vegetable garden, cows, and chickens supplied all the food they could want. With hundreds of cousins on farms nearby, there was always someone to play with. Cesar's best friend was his brother Richard. They never spent a day apart. That looks like fun, playing in the water there next to their house. Cesar was so happy at home that he was a little afraid when school started. On his first day, he grabbed the seat next to his older sister Rita. The teacher moved him to another seat, and Cesar flew out the door and ran home. It took 3 days of coaxing for him to return to school and take his place with the other first graders. Cesar was stubborn, but he was not a fighter. His mother cautioned her children against fighting, urging them to use their minds and mouths to work out conflicts. Then, in 1937, the summer Cesar was 10, the trees around the ranch began to wilt. The sun baked the farm soil rock hard. A drought was choking the life out of Arizona. Without water for the crops, the Chavez family couldn't make money to pay its bills. Now, a drought is when there's not a lot of rain. And if you work farming, which means to grow fruits and vegetables, then the ground doesn't have the water it needs to feed the plants, and the plants die. And in this family, you take the plants and you sell them for money. So if the plants are dead, then they don't have anything to sell for money. How scary. There came a day when Cesar's mother couldn't stop crying. In a daze, Cesar watched his father strap their possessions onto the roof of their old car. After a long struggle, the family no longer owned the ranch. They had no choice but to join the hundreds of thousands of people fleeing to the green valleys of California to look for work. And those changes must have been hard for him and his family. To go from having many things to very little, leaving the home you love. Cesar's old life had vanished. Now he and his family were migrants, working on other people's farms, crisscrossing California, picking whatever fruits and vegetables were in season. When the Chavez family arrived at the first of their new homes in California, they found a battered old shed. Its doors were missing and garbage covered the dirt floor. Cold, damp air seeped into their bedding and clothes. They shared water and outdoor toilets with a dozen other families, and overcrowding made everything filthy. The neighbors were constantly fighting, and the noise upset Cesar. He had no place to play games with Richard. Meals were sometimes made of dandelion greens gathered along the road. What a difference this must have been for him and his family. Cesar swallowed his bitter homesickness and worked alongside his family. He was small and not very strong, but still a fierce worker. Nearly every crop caused torment. Yanking out beets broke the skin between his thumb and index finger. Grapevines sprayed with bug-killing chemicals made his eyes sting and his lungs wheeze. Lettuce had to be the worst. Thinning lettuce all day with a short-handed hoe would make hot spasms shoot through his back. Farm chores on someone else's farm instead of on his own felt like a form of slavery. The Chavez family talked constantly of saving enough money to buy back their ranch. But by each sundown, the whole family had earned as little as 30 cents for the day's work. As the years blurred together, they spoke of the ranch less and less. What a sad time. A sad time indeed. But a beautiful time where they're working together as a family, trying to take care of one another. Single file they continued, covering an average of 15 miles a day. They inched their way through the San Joaquin Valley, while the unharvested grapes in Delano turned white with mold. Cesar developed painful blisters right away. He and many others had blood seeping out of their shoes. The word spread. Along the way, farm workers offered food and drink as the marchers passed by. When the sun set, marchers lit candles and kept going. Oh, this looks like Cesar in school. His teacher doesn't look very friendly. The other kids are looking at him. It says, "I am a clown. I speak Spanish." That is very ugly, boys and girls. To be made fun of because of the language that you speak, that is not acceptable. We should always treat others with kindness, regardless of what language they speak or how they look. It's really cool that he can speak a different language. They shouldn't treat him poorly like that. It makes me feel sad and upset to see that they have made him feel that way. Made him feel sad and not wanted. Shelter was no longer a problem. Supporters began welcoming them each night with feasts. Every night was a rally. "Our pilgrimage is the match," one speaker shouted, "that will light our cause for all farm workers to see what is happening here." Another cried, "We seek our basic God-given rights as human beings. Viva la causa!" Eager supporters would keep the marchers up half the night talking about change. Every morning, the line of marchers swelled. Cesar always in the lead. I'm glad someone's standing up to change the situation. On the 9th day, hundreds marched through Fresno. The long, peaceful march was a shock to people unaware of how California farm workers had to live. Now students, public officials, religious leaders, and citizens from everywhere offered to help. For the grape company, the publicity was becoming unbearable. And on the vines, the grapes continued to rot. In Modesto, on the 15th day, an exhilarated crowd celebrated Cesar's 38th birthday. 2 days later, 5,000 people met the marchers in Stockton with flowers, guitars, and accordions. Wow. What a way to show support for these people who are working hard and not earning enough to take care of their families. We can show support by standing up and protesting things that are not right, by saying, "Hey, this is not okay that our friends are being treated poorly or unfairly." That evening, Cesar received a message that he was sure was a prank. But in case it was true, he left the march and had someone drive him all through the night to a mansion in wealthy Beverly Hills. Officials from the grape company were waiting for him. They were ready to recognize the authority of the National Farm Workers Association, promising a contract with a pay raise and better conditions. Cesar rushed back to join the march. Wow, looks like someone has listened. On Easter Sunday, when the marchers arrived in Sacramento, the parade was 10,000 people strong. From the steps of the state capitol building, the joyous announcement was made to the public. Cesar Chavez had just signed the first contract for farm workers in American history. Look at this. Viva la causa. Huelga. Si se puede. The parade erupted into a giant fiesta. Crowds swarmed the steps, some people cheering, many weeping. Prancing horses carried men in mariachi outfits. Everyone sang and waved flowers or flags. They made a place of honor for the 57 marchers who had walked the entire journey. Speaker after speaker, addressing the audience in Spanish and in English, took the microphone. "You cannot close your eyes and your ears to us any longer," cried one. "You cannot pretend that we do not exist." The crowd celebrated until the sky was full of stars. The march had taken its toll. Cesar's leg was swollen and he was running a high fever. Gently, he reminded everyone that the battle was not over. It is well to remember there must be courage, but also that in victory there must be humility. Much more work lay ahead, but the victory was stunning. Some of the wealthiest people in the country had been forced to recognize some of the poorest as human beings. Cesar Chavez had won his fight without violence, and he would never be powerless again. Wow. Here are some notes about Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez was born near Yuma, Arizona in 1927. Before he founded the National Farm Workers Association, workers had no way to protect themselves. They had the longest hours, lowest wages, harshest conditions, shortest lifespans, and least power of any group of workers in America. We had never thought, Chavez said, that we could actually have any say in our lives. We were poor, we knew it, and we were beyond helping ourselves. After the walk to Sacramento, the longest protest march in U.S. history, Chavez was known to many as a hero. To show his continuing commitment to la causa, he would occasionally stop eating. His hunger strikes would attract publicity from around the world. Flying black eagles began to be printed on grape boxes from the few companies that offered contracts, and much of the public learned to avoid the others. It took 5 years of fasting by Chavez, of jail for him and other leaders, of marches, picketing, and bargaining before most of the largest Delano grape growers gave in. Millions of pounds of grapes had rotted, costing growers more than $25 million. It was the first successful agricultural strike in U.S. history. Contracts promised better wages, health insurance, and other safeguards. 45 minutes after he signed the last of the grape contracts, Chavez was organizing a strike of lettuce workers elsewhere in California. Putting in 18-hour days, always on the move, he won many more fights on behalf of migrants, including the banning of the short-handled hoe, the cause of permanent back injury to thousands of workers. Chavez credited his mother's teachings as a chief influence. He also took strength from his religious faith, his Mexican heritage, and his heroes, St. Francis of Assisi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., leader of the African American Civil Rights Movement, and Mahatma Gandhi, who led the nonviolent fight for India's independence from Great Britain. Chavez's wife, Helen, provided indispensable help, as did his 8 children, other family members, and loyal coworkers. In 1993, after a hunger strike lasting 36 days, Chavez never fully regained his strength. He died in his sleep at age 66. A crowd many times larger than the one that had greeted him in Sacramento attended his funeral in Delano. Chavez was and is controversial, especially among those resistant to change. He had many enemies and received constant death threats. Even today, some argue about him and his goals, and others have forgotten him or have never heard of him. But many continue to see him as a hero for his utter sincerity, his belief that peaceful dedication to a cause is more effective than force, and his self-sacrifice in the face of overwhelming odds. I hope you enjoyed this story and learning about Cesar Chavez. Have a great day. Goodbye.